The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Clarence House as Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell adjusted her earpiece and checked her watch. It was 6:47 a.m., and the day was already promising to be anything but ordinary. Sarah had been working as a security specialist for the Royal Protection Unit for 8 years, but nothing had prepared her for what she was about to discover. Sarah's role as a palace sentinel was more complex than most people understood. While the public saw the ceremonial guards and the obvious security measures, there was an entire network of digital surveillance and protection that operated behind the scenes. Her job involved monitoring communications, ensuring cybersecurity, and protecting the royal family from modern threats that went far beyond physical danger. The call had come in at 4:23 a.m. There had been suspicious activity detected on the palace's secure network. Someone had been accessing encrypted communications during unusual hours, and the digital footprint suggested it was coming from within the royal household itself. Sarah's supervisor, Commander James Hartwell, had been unusually tense when he briefed her on the situation. "We need you to investigate this quietly," Hartwell had said, his weathered face showing concern. "The activity patterns suggest someone with high-level access is involved. We can't afford any leaks, and we certainly can't afford any security breaches." Sarah had nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Working in royal protection meant that discretion wasn't just preferred, it was absolutely essential. The slightest hint of internal security issues could create a media storm that would damage the monarchy's reputation irreparably. As she made her way through the corridors of Clarence House, Sarah reflected on how different her job had become over the years. When she first joined the Royal Protection Unit, most threats were physical: protesters, potential attackers, or overzealous fans. Now, in the digital age, the dangers were more sophisticated and often harder to detect. The security office was located in the basement level of Clarence House, accessible only through a series of coded doors and biometric scanners. Sarah's colleagues were already at work, monitoring various feeds and communications channels. The atmosphere was tense, and she could sense that everyone knew something significant was happening. "Morning, Sarah," called out Thomas Chen, a cybersecurity analyst who had been with the unit for 3 years. "Hartwell wants to see you immediately. The situation from this morning has developed." Sarah frowned as she made her way to Commander Hartwell's office. The fact that developments had occurred so quickly suggested that whatever was happening was serious. Hartwell was known for his calm demeanor, but when Sarah entered his office, she could see the stress lines around his eyes. "Sarah, we have a problem," Hartwell began without preamble. "The unauthorized access we detected this morning wasn't just someone browsing the network. Someone has been systematically accessing private communications, and they've been covering their tracks quite cleverly." He turned his computer monitor toward her, showing a complex diagram of network activity. "The access patterns show someone logging in during the early morning hours, usually between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., when most of the household staff are asleep. They've been accessing encrypted message files, phone logs, and even some private correspondence." Sarah studied the screen carefully. Her training in digital forensics allowed her to understand the technical aspects of what she was seeing. "Do we have any indication of who might have this level of access?" "That's where it gets complicated," Hartwell replied grimly. "The access is coming from a device that's registered to the Duchess of Cornwall's personal security detail, but the usage patterns don't match her normal activity." The mention of Camilla immediately raised the stakes of the investigation. As the wife of the heir to the throne, any security breach involving her could have massive implications for the monarchy. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. "We need you to conduct a discreet investigation," Hartwell explained. "You'll need to examine the device in question, analyze the communications that have been accessed, and determine exactly what's happening. But Sarah, this needs to stay completely confidential until we understand the full scope of the situation." Sarah nodded, understanding the delicate nature of her assignment. Investigating anything related to senior royals required extreme caution and diplomatic skill. One wrong move could end her career and potentially damage relationships within the royal household. "I'll need access to the device and all the relevant logs," she said. "And I'll need to do this without alerting anyone who might be involved." Hartwell handed her a secure tablet containing the preliminary investigation files. "Everything we have so far is on here. The device in question is Camilla's personal smartphone. According to our records, it should only be used for specific approved communications, but someone has been using it to access highly sensitive materials." As Sarah reviewed the files, she began to understand the complexity of the situation. The smartphone in question wasn't just any phone. It was a specially secured device that was part of the royal family's communication network. These devices were supposed to be used only for official business and approved personal communications. The unauthorized activity logs showed a pattern of behavior that was both sophisticated and concerning. Whoever was accessing the sensitive materials knew exactly what they were looking for and had the technical skills to cover their tracks effectively. This wasn't the work of an amateur or someone stumbling across information by accident. "There's something else," Hartwell added, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Some of the communications that were accessed contain information about internal royal family discussions, including conversations about succession planning and private family matters." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Information about succession planning was among the most sensitive material in the entire monarchy. If someone was accessing this information without authorization, the implications could be enormous. Such information in the wrong hands could be used for blackmail, could be sold to tabloid newspapers, or could be used to manipulate royal family decisions. "I'll start the investigation immediately," Sarah said, standing up from her chair. "How much time do I have?" "We need answers quickly," Hartwell replied. "The longer this goes on, the more risk there is of information being leaked or misused. But remember, discretion is absolutely critical. If word of this investigation leaks out, it could cause a crisis within the royal household." Sarah left Hartwell's office with a sense of determination, mixed with apprehension. She had handled sensitive investigations before, but nothing quite like this. The combination of high-level royal involvement, sophisticated technical skills, and potentially explosive information made this case uniquely challenging. Her first step would be to examine the physical device itself. The smartphone would contain digital fingerprints that could help her understand exactly how it was being used and by whom. She would need to analyze not just what information had been accessed, but also how the unauthorized user had gained access in the first place. As she made her way to the secure evidence room where the device was being held, Sarah thought about the various possibilities. It could be someone within the royal household who had legitimate access to the device but was using it inappropriately. It could be an outside actor who had somehow compromised the device's security. Or it could be something even more concerning, someone deliberately planted within the royal security apparatus. The evidence room was a sterile, white space filled with advanced technical equipment for analyzing digital devices. Sarah put on gloves and carefully examined Camilla's smartphone. It appeared to be a standard high-security device, but she knew that appearances could be deceiving. Using specialized forensic software, Sarah began to extract data from the phone's memory. The process would take several hours, but it would provide her with a complete picture of how the device had been used. She would be able to see every application that had been accessed, every message that had been sent or received, and every website that had been visited. As the data extraction process ran, Sarah reviewed the preliminary findings from the network analysis. The pattern of unauthorized access was indeed sophisticated. Someone had been using advanced techniques to mask their digital footprint, suggesting that this wasn't a casual breach, but a deliberate and planned operation. The implications were staggering. If someone within the royal household was deliberately accessing sensitive information without authorization, it represented a massive security breach. But if an outside actor had managed to compromise royal communications, it suggested that their security systems had fundamental vulnerabilities. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from Thomas Chen. New development. We found evidence of information being forwarded to external email addresses. Need to brief you ASAP. The discovery that information was being sent outside the royal network escalated the situation to a completely different level. This was no longer just about unauthorized access. This was about potential espionage or information trafficking. Sarah quickly secured her forensic equipment and headed back to the main security office. When she arrived, she found Thomas and two other analysts gathered around a large monitor displaying email routing information. The atmosphere in the room was tense, and she could see that they had uncovered something significant. "Show me what you found," Sarah said, joining the group around the monitor. Thomas pointed to several highlighted entries on the screen. "We've traced some of the accessed information to a series of email forwarding operations. Someone has been taking sensitive communications and sending them to a network of external email addresses." Sarah studied the routing information carefully. The email addresses appeared to be registered to various anonymous email services, making it difficult to trace their ultimate destination. But the pattern of forwarding suggested a systematic operation rather than random information theft. "Do we know what specific information was being forwarded?" she asked. "That's where it gets really concerning," Thomas replied. "The forwarded materials include private family communications, security briefings, and even some diplomatic correspondence. Someone has been systematically copying highly sensitive information and sending it outside our secure network." The scope of the breach was becoming clear, and it was far worse than Sarah had initially imagined. This wasn't just about accessing information. This was about systematically stealing some of the most sensitive communications within the royal household. "We need to trace these email addresses and find out where this information is going," Sarah said. "And we need to do it quickly, before any more sensitive material is compromised." As she looked at the evidence mounting on the screens around her, Sarah realized that she was dealing with something far more complex and dangerous than a simple security breach. Someone with high-level access to royal communications was systematically stealing information and passing it to unknown external parties. The investigation was about to take a much more serious turn, and Sarah knew that the decisions she made in the next few hours could have implications that reached far beyond the walls of Clarence House. Sarah Mitchell stood in the secure conference room, staring at the wall of monitors that displayed the growing evidence of the security breach. It had been 18 hours since she first learned about the unauthorized access to Camilla's phone, and each new discovery made the situation more alarming. What had started as a routine cybersecurity investigation was rapidly becoming one of the most serious internal threats the royal household had faced in decades. Commander Hartwell entered the room carrying a steaming cup of coffee and looking like he hadn't slept. Behind him followed Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a digital forensics expert from MI5 who had been called in to assist with the investigation. The involvement of MI5 indicated that the security services were treating this as a potential national security matter. "Sarah, what's the latest?" Hartwell asked, settling into a chair at the conference table. "We've made significant progress, but the news isn't good," Sarah replied, pulling up her findings on the main screen. The phone forensics reveal that someone has been accessing Camilla's device remotely for at least 6 months. They've been using sophisticated malware that was specifically designed to operate on royal security devices. Dr. Warren leaned forward, studying the technical data. "This isn't amateur work," she observed. "The malware is custom-built and shows characteristics we've seen in state-sponsored cyber operations. Someone invested serious resources into developing this capability." Sarah nodded grimly. "That's not the worst part. We've traced the information flow, and it appears that stolen communications have been reaching at least 12 different external recipients. Some of the email addresses trace back to journalist accounts at major British tabloids." The silence in the room was deafening. If sensitive royal communications had been leaked to tabloid journalists, it explained several recent news stories that had contained unusually detailed information about private royal family matters. Stories that the palace had assumed were based on speculation or unnamed sources might actually have been based on stolen communications. "How bad is the information that was stolen?" Hartwell asked. Sarah pulled up a classified summary she had prepared. "Extremely sensitive. The stolen materials include private text messages between family members discussing succession plans, confidential security briefings about threat assessments, diplomatic communications with foreign royal families, and personal conversations about family disputes and health matters." Dr. Warren whistled softly. "That's enough material to embarrass the royal family for years. If this information is being systematically leaked to the press, it could destabilize the entire monarchy." "There's more," Sarah continued. "We've found evidence that someone has been taking specific requests for information. The pattern of access suggests that external parties have been asking for particular types of communications, and whoever is operating this breach has been fulfilling these requests." This revelation changed the entire nature of the investigation. This wasn't just about someone stealing information opportunistically. Someone was running an organized operation to provide specific royal communications to external clients. It was essentially a royal espionage service operating from within the palace itself. Hartwell stood up and began pacing around the room. "Do we have any leads on who might be doing this? Someone with this level of access has to be either a senior member of the household staff or someone in the security apparatus itself." "That's what we need to determine next," Sarah replied. "But we have to be extremely careful. If the person responsible realizes we're investigating, they could destroy evidence or escalate their activities." Dr. Warren had been quietly reviewing the technical evidence while they talked. "Sarah, I need to show you something," she said, pulling up a new analysis on her laptop. "I've been examining the malware that was used to access the phone, and I've found some interesting characteristics." She connected her laptop to the main screen, displaying a detailed breakdown of the malicious software. "This malware has been designed to be almost undetectable, but it has one weakness. It leaves a unique digital signature when it communicates with its command and control servers." Sarah studied the technical details with interest. "Can we use that signature to identify other infected devices?" "Exactly," Dr. Warren replied. "If we scan the entire Royal Communications network for this signature, we should be able to identify every device that has been compromised. More importantly, we might be able to identify the source device that was used to install the malware in the first place." This was the breakthrough they needed. If they could identify the source of the malware, they would be much closer to identifying the person responsible for the breach. Hartwell immediately authorized a comprehensive scan of the entire Royal Communications network. While the network scan ran, Sarah continued her analysis of the stolen communications. She was beginning to see patterns in what had been taken and when. Certain types of information seemed to be prioritized, and the timing of access often coincided with major royal events or announcements. "Commander, I think we need to consider the possibility that this operation has been ongoing for much longer than 6 months, Sarah said. "Some of the patterns I'm seeing suggest that whoever is doing this has been planning this for years." As if to confirm her suspicions, Dr. Warren's network scan began producing results. "Sarah, you need to see this," she called out. "We found the malware signature on 17 different devices across the royal network." The scope of the breach was staggering. 17 compromised devices meant that the security of the entire royal communications system had been fundamentally compromised. Sarah felt a cold dread settling in her stomach as she realized the full implications. "Which devices?" Hartwell asked tersely. Dr. Warren read from her screen. "Personal devices belonging to Prince Charles, Prince William, Prince Harry, the Queen's private secretary, 3 senior household staff members, 4 security personnel, 2 diplomatic staff, and 3 devices used by the Queen herself. The room fell silent. The security breach wasn't limited to Camilla's phone. It encompassed the communications of virtually the entire senior royal family. Someone had gained access to the most private and sensitive communications of the British monarchy. "This is a catastrophic security failure," Hartwell said quietly. "We need to notify the Queen's private secretary immediately, and we need to brief the security services at the highest level." Sarah was already thinking about the investigative challenges ahead. With 17 compromised devices, identifying the source of the breach would be much more complex, but it also meant they had more evidence to work with. "Dr. Warren, can you determine which device was the initial point of infection?" Sarah asked. "I'm working on that now," Dr. Warren replied, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "The malware has a timestamp feature that should allow us to trace the infection sequence." While they waited for the analysis, Sarah began reviewing the access logs for all 17 compromised devices. The pattern of unauthorized access was sophisticated and systematic. Someone had been carefully monitoring the communications of the entire royal family, collecting information that could be used for various purposes. The phone in the room rang, and Hartwell answered with a terse yes. After listening for a moment, his face grew even more grim. "Understood. We'll be right there." He hung up and turned to Sarah and Dr. Warren. "The Queen's private secretary wants an immediate briefing. We need to go to Buckingham Palace now." The drive to Buckingham Palace was tense and silent. Sarah knew that they were about to brief some of the most senior officials in the royal household about a security breach that threatened the very foundations of royal privacy and security. The implications could extend far beyond embarrassing news stories. This level of access to royal communications could have serious diplomatic and political consequences. When they arrived at Buckingham Palace, they were escorted to a secure briefing room that Sarah had never seen before. The room was clearly designed for the most sensitive discussions, with advanced security measures and no windows. Waiting for them were Sir Edward Young, the Queen's private secretary, and 2 other officials, whose titles Sarah didn't recognize, but who clearly held senior positions. "Please sit down," Sir Edward said formally. "We understand you have discovered a serious security breach. We need to understand the full scope of the situation immediately." Sarah took a deep breath and began her briefing. She explained the initial discovery of unauthorized access to Camilla's phone, the subsequent investigation that revealed systematic information theft, and the shocking discovery that 17 royal devices had been compromised. As she presented the evidence, she could see the gravity of the situation sinking in among the senior officials. When she described the evidence that stolen information had been forwarded to tabloid journalists, Sir Edward's face grew pale. "How long has this been going on?" he asked. "Based on our analysis, the systematic theft appears to have been active for at least 6 months," Sarah replied. "But we have indications that preparatory work for this operation may have been underway for much longer," Dr. Warren added her technical perspective. "The sophistication of the malware and the systematic nature of the operation suggests that this was planned and executed by highly skilled individuals with significant resources. This isn't the work of a lone actor." One of the unidentified officials spoke for the first time. "Do we have any indication of the ultimate purpose of this operation? Is this about money, political influence, or something else?" Sarah had been thinking about this question throughout her investigation. The pattern of information theft suggests multiple purposes. Some materials appear to have been sold to tabloid newspapers for financial gain. But other materials that were stolen have high intelligence value and could be used for political leverage or blackmail. The implications hung heavy in the air. If someone had access to the private communications of the royal family, They potentially had enormous power to influence royal decisions or to embarrass the monarchy at politically sensitive moments. Sir Edward stood up and walked to the secure phone in the corner of the room. "I need to brief the Queen immediately," he said. "This situation requires decisions at the highest level." While Sir Edward made his call, Sarah continued her analysis of the evidence. She was beginning to develop theories about who might be responsible for the breach, but she needed more evidence before she could make accusations. Dr. Warren had been running additional technical analysis on her laptop. "Sarah, I have the results of the infection sequence analysis," she said quietly. "The initial malware infection appears to have originated from a device belonging to Marcus Thompson, one of the senior security technicians." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Marcus Thompson was a trusted member of the Royal Protection Team who had access to all the devices that had been compromised. If he was responsible for the breach, it represented the worst possible scenario, an insider threat at the highest level of royal security. But something about the evidence troubled Sarah. Marcus had been with the Royal Protection Team for 12 years and had an exemplary record. It seemed unlikely that he would suddenly become involved in systematic information theft. "Dr. Warren, is it possible that Marcus's device was used without his knowledge?" Sarah asked. "Definitely possible," Dr. Warren replied. "If someone had physical access to his device, they could have installed the malware without his knowledge. His device could have been the vector for spreading the malware to other royal devices." This possibility made the investigation even more complex. If Marcus was innocent, then someone else had used his device to launch the attack. That suggested someone with intimate knowledge of royal security procedures and access to secure areas of the palace. Sir Edward returned from his phone call looking extremely serious. "The Queen has authorized a complete investigation using all available resources. We're bringing in a full team from MI5 and the Metropolitan Police. This is now being treated as a matter of national security." The escalation of the investigation reflected the severity of the breach, but it also meant that Sarah's role would likely change. Once MI5 took control of the investigation, palace security would become a supporting role rather than the lead agency. "What are our next steps?" Sarah asked. "We need to interview Marcus Thompson immediately," Sir Edward replied. "But we need to do it carefully. If he's involved, we don't want to alert him to our investigation. If he's innocent, we need to determine how his device was compromised." Sarah nodded, understanding the delicate nature of the situation. Interviewing a member of the royal security team about potential espionage required extreme care and diplomatic skill. As the meeting broke up, Sarah realized that the investigation was entering a new phase. The discovery that 17 royal devices had been compromised had transformed this from a cybersecurity incident into a potential national security crisis. The decisions made in the next few hours could determine not just the outcome of the investigation, but the future security of the entire British royal family. The interview room at Scotland Yard was deliberately unremarkable. Gray walls, fluorescent lighting, and a simple table with 4 chairs. Sarah Mitchell sat across from Marcus Thompson, watching his reactions carefully as Detective Chief Inspector Helen Brooks from the Metropolitan Police's Counter-Terrorism Unit led the questioning. It had been 3 days since the discovery of the massive security breach, and the investigation had taken several unexpected turns. Marcus appeared nervous, but not guilty. His responses were consistent, and his body language suggested genuine confusion rather than deception. He had willingly submitted to the interview and had answered all questions without hesitation. Sarah was beginning to believe that he was not the perpetrator they were looking for. "Marcus, I need you to think carefully about this," DCI Brooks said. "Your device was the source of the malware that compromised 17 royal communications devices. If you didn't install it yourself, someone else must have had access to your equipment." Marcus ran his hands through his hair, clearly frustrated. "I've told you everything I can remember," he said. My device is always with me or locked in the secure storage at the palace. The only time anyone else might have had access was during the security system updates 3 months ago. Sarah leaned forward with interest. Tell us about the security system updates. It was a routine upgrade to our communications security, Marcus explained. A team from the contractor came in to update all our devices with new encryption software. They had to physically handle each device to install the updates. DCI Brooks exchanged a meaningful glance with Sarah. This was the first they had heard about a contractor having physical access to royal security devices. Who was the contractor? She asked. CyberShield Security Systems, Marcus replied. They've been handling our communication security for about 2 years. The update was authorized at the highest level. I have all the paperwork if you need it. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. CyberShield Security Systems was a relatively new company in the cybersecurity field, but they had quickly gained contracts with several high-profile government and corporate clients. If CyberShield was involved in the security breach, the implications could extend far beyond the royal family. After the interview concluded, Sarah and DCI Brooks met with the rest of the investigation team in a secure conference room. Dr. Warren from MI5 had been leading a parallel investigation into CyberShield security systems, and her findings were disturbing. CyberShield isn't what it appears to be, Dr. Warren began, displaying her research on the main screen. On the surface, it's a legitimate cybersecurity company with impressive credentials and high-profile clients. But when we dig deeper, the ownership structure is extremely complex and appears to be designed to hide the true controllers of the company. Sarah studied the organizational chart on the screen. What do you mean by hidden controllers? The company is owned through a series of shell companies and offshore entities, Dr. Warren explained. When we trace the ownership back through all the layers, we find connections to foreign intelligence services. Specifically, we've found links to Russian intelligence operations. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If CyberShield was a front for foreign intelligence services, then the royal communications breach was not just a criminal matter. It was an act of espionage by a hostile foreign power. DCI Brooks spoke first. How many other high-profile clients does CyberShield have? Dr. Warren pulled up another screen showing a list of CyberShield's known clients. They have contracts with 3 government ministries, 2 major financial institutions, several multinational corporations, and 4 other European royal households. Sarah felt sick as she realized the scope of what they had uncovered. This isn't just about the British royal family. CyberShield has been systematically penetrating the communication systems of high-value targets across Europe. Exactly, Dr. Warren confirmed. We believe we've uncovered a massive foreign intelligence operation that has been running for at least 3 years. The royal family breach was just one part of a much larger espionage campaign. The investigation team spent the next several hours analyzing the evidence and planning their response. The discovery that they were dealing with foreign espionage rather than criminal activity had transformed the entire operation. This was now a matter for the highest levels of national security. Sir Edward Young arrived from Buckingham Palace to receive a briefing on the latest developments. His face was grave as he listened to the evidence about CyberShield and the foreign intelligence connections. "What's the current status of the compromised information?" he asked. Sarah consulted her notes. "We've identified approximately 2,847 specific communications that were stolen from royal devices over the past 6 months. This includes private messages between family members, security briefings, diplomatic correspondence, and personal conversations about health and family matters." "How much of this information has been disseminated?" Sir Edward asked. "That's harder to determine," DCI Brooks replied. "We know that some materials have been leaked to tabloid newspapers, resulting in several embarrassing news stories over the past few months. But we believe that most of the stolen information has been retained by the foreign intelligence services for potential future use." The possibility that hostile foreign powers possessed intimate details about the private lives and communications of the royal family was deeply troubling. Such information could be used for blackmail, political manipulation, or diplomatic leverage for years to come. Dr. Warren had been working on tracing the stolen information through the various communication channels used by the Cyber Shield operation. "We've been able to track some of the stolen data to servers in Eastern Europe," she reported. "The information appears to be stored in a sophisticated database that's designed for rapid searching and retrieval." Sarah was impressed by the technical sophistication of the operation. "It sounds like they've built a comprehensive intelligence database using stolen communications from multiple high-value targets." "That's exactly what we think happened," Dr. Warren confirmed. Cyber Shield has essentially created a private intelligence service using stolen communications from government officials, business leaders, and royal families across Europe. The phone in the conference room rang, and Sir Edward answered it. After a brief conversation, he hung up with a serious expression. That was the Prime Minister's office. "The PM has been briefed on the situation and has authorized any measures necessary to shut down this operation and secure the stolen information." This level of political authorization indicated that the government was treating the Cyber Shield operation as a serious national security threat. Sarah knew that such authorization could include everything from diplomatic pressure to covert operations to shut down the foreign intelligence network. Over the following days, the investigation expanded rapidly as law enforcement agencies across Europe coordinated their response to the Cyber Shield operation. Sarah found herself working with intelligence officers from France, Germany, Spain, and the Netherlands, all of whom had discovered similar security breaches in their own high-profile targets. The international cooperation revealed the true scope of the Cyber Shield operation. The company had systematically targeted the communications of political leaders, business executives, and royal families across Europe, creating what intelligence analysts described as one of the most comprehensive foreign espionage operations in recent history. Sarah's role in the investigation had evolved from a palace security officer to a key coordinator in an international intelligence operation. She was working directly with MI5, MI6, and allied intelligence services to trace the stolen royal communications and neutralize the threat to ongoing royal security. The breakthrough came when German intelligence located the primary servers used to store the stolen communications. A coordinated international operation resulted in the seizure of the servers and the arrest of 12 individuals connected to the Cyber Shield operation. When Sarah examined the recovered data, she was amazed by the volume of information that had been stolen. The servers contained communications from hundreds of high-profile individuals across Europe, including detailed profiles of their personal relationships, financial situations, health conditions, and political views. The royal communications that had been stolen were just a small part of a massive database of compromised information, but the impact on royal security was still severe. The stolen materials included information that could be embarrassing or politically damaging if released publicly. Working with palace officials and MI5, Sarah developed a comprehensive plan to assess the damage from the stolen royal communications and implement new security measures to prevent similar breaches in the future. The plan included upgrading all royal communications devices, implementing new encryption protocols, and establishing more rigorous vetting procedures for contractors with access to royal systems. The final phase of the investigation involved determining exactly what information about the royal family might still be in hostile hands. While the servers had been seized, intelligence analysts believed that copies of the stolen data might have been distributed to other foreign intelligence services or criminal organizations. Sarah spent weeks analyzing the recovered server data to identify every piece of royal communication that had been compromised. The process was painstaking, but it was necessary to understand the full extent of the security breach and its potential long-term implications. The investigation also revealed several embarrassing security failures that had made the Cyber Shield operation possible. The company had been able to gain access to royal communications systems because existing security protocols had not adequately verified the backgrounds of contractor personnel. As a result of these discoveries, Sarah was tasked with leading a comprehensive review of royal security procedures. The review would examine every aspect of royal communications security, from device management to personnel vetting to contractor oversight. The CyberShield investigation had begun with the discovery of unauthorized access to Camilla's phone, but it had evolved into one of the most significant counterintelligence operations in recent British history. The case had exposed a sophisticated foreign espionage network that had compromised the communications of high-profile targets across Europe. For Sarah, the investigation had been both professionally challenging and personally rewarding. She had played a key role in uncovering a serious national security threat and had helped to protect the privacy and security of the royal family. But the case had also highlighted the evolving nature of security threats in the digital age. As she prepared her final report on the investigation, Sarah reflected on the lessons learned from the CyberShield case. The royal family, like many high-profile individuals and organizations, had been targeted by sophisticated adversaries who used legitimate business relationships to gain access to sensitive systems. The success of the CyberShield operation demonstrated that traditional security measures were insufficient to protect against modern cyber espionage threats. New approaches to security would be needed to protect royal communications and other high-value targets from similar attacks in the future. The investigation had also shown the importance of international cooperation in addressing cyber espionage threats. The CyberShield operation had been successful because it operated across multiple countries, exploiting differences in national security procedures and legal frameworks. Sarah's final report included dozens of recommendations for improving royal communications security and protecting against future cyber espionage attempts. The recommendations ranged from technical improvements to policy changes to enhanced international cooperation. As she submitted her report to Commander Hartwell, Sarah knew that the CyberShield investigation had changed her career and her understanding of modern security challenges. The case had started with a simple security alert about unauthorized device access, but it had evolved into a complex international counterintelligence operation. The hidden messages that the Palace Sentinel had uncovered on Camilla's phone had led to the discovery of one of the most sophisticated espionage operations targeting European institutions in recent years. What began as a routine investigation had become a defining case in the ongoing struggle between privacy, security, and the global reach of modern espionage.